Get ready to brew big with a big boy. This dripper allows us to brew from 2 to 5 cups of coffee. So if you need to make a big amount of coffee for 2 or more people, or you just want to make a lot of coffee for yourself, now you easily can. This big brewer is made of polypropylene and it has the same board angle as the OREA V3 and the OREA V4 Narrow. It has a wide bottom with a central hole, but this hole is not where the coffee drains from the paper like it works for the OREA glass or the open base. But thanks for the teeth on the bottom, again 32 of them like for the OREA V3 Mark II or the OREA V4 Fast Base, the paper is lifted from the bottom so that the coffee can drain from the whole surface of the bottom of the paper and not only from the middle. And then after the liquid is collected on the channels, it flows in the middle. In this way we benefit from the characteristic of a flat bottom brewer, where the water can flow uniformly throughout the coffee of the bed so that you can achieve a nice balanced sweet cup of coffee. It works with different paper filters. You can use the OREA Big Boy filters that recall the classic Kalita paper filter, but with a wider bottom. Or you can use flat paper filters that you can fit in the brewer with the help of the negotiator. I didn't find a big difference in between the papers, but if you use the OREA flat type G, it flows a bit faster than the Big Boy filter. So you might get a more crisp acidity from your coffee. The very good thing is that no matter if you use ridges or flat paper, the Big Boy never clogs. The paper doesn't collapse when you pre-wet it and while you brew. And this thanks to the support that gives constant airflow during brewing. When you want to brew with this dripper, I suggest using a minimum of 35 and a maximum of 60 grams of coffee. You can use 30, of course, but you risk not having enough bad depth. Something that is very important to take care of when you brew with the Big Boy because of its wide bottom. Regarding pouring, I suggest pouring a big amount of water each time, like 200 grams or more for each pour. If you pour a small amount of water each time, something that you can do, it might create a higher migration of fines on the bottom, slowing down the drainage. And you risk having a very long total brew time that can bring to the cup some unpleasant compounds. This doesn't happen with every coffee, but it can happen often if your grinder produces a lot of fines. Regarding grinding, if you follow my suggestion of long pours of water, you can grind your coffee slightly finer than usual. The coffee will still flow fast, and the finer grind size will let the water extract more sweetness from the coffee. Now I want to give you my go-to recipe for when I brew 2 cups of coffee with the Big Boy. I normally use 35 grams of coffee brewed with 600 grams of water, and that makes a coffee to water ratio of 1:17, and I use this ratio to extract more sweetness in my coffee. I usually grind the coffee at 25 regular clicks with a comandante and grinder, and then of course, depending on coffee, I adjust the grind size. If I'm brewing a coffee that drains slower than usual, I grind slightly coarser. I also suggest grinding slightly coarser if you're brewing 50 or more grams of coffee. And this because putting a higher amount of coffee in the brewer, it will increase the bed depth. And this will create more resistance to the water flowing through the coffee. And so if you grind slightly coarser, you can compensate the flow rate. I place and pre-wet the Big Boy filter, add the coffee, distribute it well, and start pouring. For my go-to recipe, I split 600 grams of water at 90 degrees Celsius in 3 pours. So for the first one, I add 200 grams. After I finish pouring, I wait until 1 minute 30 before applying the second pour. And this gives time to the water to drain and to the CO2 to escape. The second pour again, 200 grams of water, and I never pour aggressively when I brew with a Big Boy. I always go steady and I apply a spiral pour. So I try to cover all the surface of the brewer with a steady pour from the middle to the edge and then coming back in. At 400 grams on the scale, I stop. Now I let all the water drain before applying the last pour. And here you can start to understand the drainage of the coffee, if it's too slow or too fast. That depends on the coffee you're using or the grind size. But I always wait after I taste the coffee if I need to change something. Once all the water is drained, I apply the last pour, 200 grams, and I pour in the same way I did with the second pour. Nice and steady until I arrive at a total of 600 grams. Then I wait until all the coffee has drained. Finally, it's time to enjoy the coffee. Whoa, the aroma is amazing, especially coming out from the Sense jug. That for me is the perfect fit when I want to brew with a big boy because it has a capacity of 900 ml. If you want to know more about the jug and of course the big boy, you can always check the links in the description box, and remember that you can have 10% off on any OREA products. So the coffee I'm brewing is natural Nicaragua. It's not very fermented, but nice and juicy. A lot of stone fruit and berries. For me, it's perfect to brew with a big boy. Delicious. If I brew a very fermented coffee, very fruit forward, I change some variables. Very fermented coffee, as well as dark roasted coffee, have in common fast drainage and high solubility. What I do first of all is to change the coffee to water ratio. I will keep brewing 35 grams of coffee, but with less water, usually 50 grams less. So 35 grams of coffee with 550 grams of water. In this way I can reduce the bitterness caused by over extraction. And I also change the pouring pattern. Instead of splitting the water in 3 pours, I will apply 200 grams of water as a first pour, and then a second one of 350 grams of water. In this way I will also reduce a bit the extraction. Then after I taste the coffee, if I find it a bit too strong, I bypass the brew with some hot water to reduce the strength. And if the coffee is still a bit over extracted, for the following time I brew the same coffee, I will grind slightly coarser, 27-28 clicks with the Comandante. In this way I will extract less and also reduce the strength. On the other hand, if I'm brewing a washed coffee as well as a very light roasted coffee, they usually are less soluble and also they drain slower, I keep the starting coffee to water ratio, so 35 grams and 600 grams of water, but the water change usually is the temperature of the water, so I will increase by 2 or even 4 degrees Celsius, and this to push a bit more the extraction. I start by grinding the coffee coarser, like 27 clicks with a Comandante, and a first pour of 100 grams of water, following by a second pour of 300 grams and the final pour of 200 grams. In this way I can extract more from the coffee, making me achieve a good sweet cup of coffee. With washed coffee it could happen that the total brew time will be longer than usual, but before grinding coarser, taste the coffee and see if it tastes good for you. It's important to change variables based on taste and not on numbers. For example, total brew time or TDS. Trust your taste. Then, if you need more help to understand the brewing variables, you can leave a message in the comment section below. Thank you very much for watching. I hope this video will help you to master your brewing skills with a big boy. I'll see you in my next videos, and in the meantime, I wish you a wonderful day and delicious coffee. Ciao!